Hello, everyone. Hi, Sachin, and hi, everyone who's listening to this.
They say future is completely dependent on what you are doing today. So it is important to focus on today, not only what you are doing, but what is happening. So I have Manoj today with me, and there is a specific aspect that I want to cover in this episode. Couple of topics that we'll be talking. So straight away, my first thing that I want to know, and this being a problem for tester because this industry is evolving so much, continuously evolving, and of course there will be a continuous rising request and demand for skilled tester. So what according to you are four critically important skills so that testers stay relevant and effective in this dynamic industry?
Yeah, I think it's a ever-changing world, isn't it? Like, I think we're at a rapid phase. I think by four initial things would be first thing would be like being open to learn. I think that's very, very important. We shouldn't think like, okay, I've learned enough and testing is this much. And I think having that sort of a closed mindset would not help us really move forward in this very fast-paced world. So I think my first key element towards being adaptable to the situation will be adaptability and continuous learning, right? So being open to learn is very first thing. And the second thing I would add is on the critical thinking aspect. Critical thinking allows us to approach testing in a very different perspective, like different scenarios. I think that will be really, really, really important. I think obviously the problem solving comes, subsequently from that. And automation proficiency is other aspect, I would say, because everything digital transformation, we're talking about digital transformation and fast feedback loops and automation becomes a key essential part. And I think the last part would be the communication and collaboration. That's very, very important because we talk about agile methodology, safe, DevOps, be it any methodology that you use. I think communication and collaboration is very, very important. To summarize, I think being able to adapt to different conditions, continuous learning, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and collaboration. So these are four critical aspects.
I think this is really important for people to understand that it's not only the technology, but also these aspects which are really important for skilled tester. But then technology is undoubtedly playing a critical role for this thing. But the challenge right now people have, technology is evolving in unpredictable pace. So and it's hard, or maybe increasingly challenging for somebody to stay up to date with this evolving technology. So what is your way, or what approach you find efficient for you and your team to always stay on forefront in ever evolving environment that we have towards technology?
I think first of all, we should not be afraid of others' progress
uh,
or some advanced things coming up. Take it at your own pace. Everyone has their own bus to catch,
yeah.
first thing, and their own project deadlines and everything. And I think we should dedicate time regularly for learning. So if I want to learn a new stuff, I try to dedicate, say, X amount of hours per day or per week, and I try to dedicate that particular amount of time only for learning the technology. For example, if you want to learn about how do I deploy an LLM into my own automation framework, so that's just an example. Or it could be a new skill like if I want to learn Python. I'm new into automation. I want to learn a language first. So then, learning that language aspect and getting into that discipline of continuous learning is very, very important. And beyond that, try to engage with fellow professionals in your field, whether through online forums like the ones that we're chatting, whether it's YouTube, your preferred way of learning, Udemy, or whatever platform it could be, and try to replicate it. Like I think reading is one thing, and putting it into practice by hands is very, very important. So that hands-on part becomes very, very critical because you could read tons of book,
Yeah.
blogs, and everything. So reading a blog versus perceiving the thoughts within that blog and putting into action is very, very important. And I would, highly recommend have your own sandbox environment. So you have GitHub, GitLab. So go ahead, push your code if you want to try automation, or if you want to do new skills, like say if you want to practice security testing based, so SQL injection. So have some sandbox environments for those aspects. Try those things in action before you have the confidence of saying, yeah, I have the skill, will not take you any further than having it your hands-on practice. So I would highly recommend having that hands-on practice. And of course, follow whatever functional testing or non-functional testing that you're trying to learn, since this is specific for quality engineers. And follow your thought leaders, influencers, especially who you try to learn more from, because they do put a lot of hours into bringing that quality content for you. So if you like the content, share with them, do leave a word about how they've done the content. They'll be happy about doing their effort for you. If you don't like it, not a problem. Skip to other channel, other video, and try to get your learning, because there's lots of resources these days. So it's just the discipline that we want to maintain and put it into practice.
Amazing. I mean, continuous learning, continuous practice you mentioned, but that small piece which you mentioned from creators' point of view, they put effort definitely to create the content which is helpful, and people should acknowledge it by commenting and by reaching out to them. Thank you so much for touching that part. I think nobody is talking about it. That's important. Uh, so you mentioned about continuous learning, right? There is a deep experience and expertise you have about this thing called open source contribution. Yeah, a lot of people want to do it, but maybe they do not have directions or to understanding on that. So I want to take advantage while we are talking to you. What according to you, first of all, can anybody do that regardless of their background and skill set, or if there are specific skill set is required, from where to get that knowledge and confidence to be able to be part of this collaborative ecosystem called open source contribution?
Sure, that's an excellent question. I think open source is one thing that keeps on coming in most of the forums, and I'll be very, very delighted to answer. I think Sachin, there is no set of specific, minimum requirements or anything to get into open source, right? So as long as, so if you know a bare minimum English, like say for example, a lot of these projects has a README, and almost, I would say, I'm just throwing it a number, maybe 40-60% of the project don't have a proper documentation about what that project is. So if you're using a project open source library at your workplace, and if you use that, and if you feel like something needs to be added, go ahead and do it. That's how you start by implementing. That's how I started my journey. I saw something was not there, but I got to know the solution for a problem that I was facing through Slack channels. Back then it was IRC channel. And then I asked a question about why is this not there in the website? And people in the Selenium team answered that, yeah, it's a good question. So probably you should go and contribute. So I would say, don't, it's not about, yeah, you need to be good at programming. You need to know the in and outs of framework. You need to know a high level of proficiency in a particular language.
Yeah,
No, these are all not minimum things. Of course, you would need that at a later point of time. And of course, it depends on what sort of contribution that you want to make. Since your
right.
question is all about what sort of skill set is required, I'm starting from the basics where a small typo corrections, grammatical corrections, or converting from a language to a different language, for example, English to Tamil, English to Hindi, or whatever, Spanish, or whatever conversion we want to do, that's still a contribution too, because the project feels that they are, it's an international project, a lot of people start using it. So contribution to open source starts from a minor typo correction to implementing a new feature. So a lot of things goes beyond this journey. So if you're someone who wants to start small, get into a feel of, yeah, I want to have a good understanding of it. So I think it can start from documentation. In that way, you understand, because once you know how to do a certain stuff, I think you already done a half step, right? So you cross half a mile from there. So, but then if those steps are not documented, then I think that's the first thing that needs to be split up. So I would say skill set. I think the only bare minimum you would need is a Git, knowing,
Yeah,
having a Git account, knowing, Git pull, Git push, those things as a minimum thing to learn. After that, it's all about the knowledge. As I mentioned, knowledge, it could be from an English language requirement
yeah.
to any language requirement to a particular framework, or what do you want to go and fix them. And then the confidence. I think the confidence that will come one step at a time, right? So I can't say, you can't be feel like, yeah, I can go and change everything no, it can't happen. So
Right.
one step at a time.
That's true. Very insightful. Uh, I think I understand this part, and people should also know that you're not going to create 80% of open source project at a time. It's just one step and then move ahead and get that confidence. Thank you so much for sharing. Manoj, you mentioned one term, journey, right? So one of the journey which everybody is now keen to get into is leadership. So uh, leadership has different meaning, different understanding for different people, but there is still, I see a gap of learning this thing, that somebody who is technical cannot be a leader, or maybe leadership is something related to different than technology or technical people. First of all, I do not believe in that, and that's why I want to ask you that people who are deep rooted in technology, in technical work, first of all, can they become leaders? I'm sure they can. They are. There are many examples like you and others. So we want to learn this from you. That what is your advice to such people who are technically good and they still want to, like, they do not want to sacrifice their technical expertise and want to be leader. So what are your advices for such kind of people?
Yeah, definitely anyone can become a leader if they know and try to manage, first of all, their own time.
Mm,
So I'm sure this is a famous line that everyone would have read somewhere, right? So leadership is not about titles, right? It's about, even if you're a technical, take about,
yeah,
say, for an example, someone could be a team lead, having, say, X amount of team members working along with them, or it could be a solo professional, maybe an individual contributor. They call it as IC role,
I see.
maybe a principal level role, or maybe a technical level role. So both has a different spectrum. Even if you're an person who's doing an IC role, you should be able to manage yourself. That's a tough part, right? So
Mm,
you set your own rules and you set your own boundaries, but the tough thing is you need to control and abide by those rules that you set for yourself. So that self-discipline should come from there. So the leadership is both available in an IC role as well as at a team leadership. So in a team leadership role where you have people working with you, so that spectrum will be a little bit different. And
yeah,
so what I'm trying to get here is leadership is everywhere, but it depends
yeah.
upon how you view it and what do you want to do with it. So that's one part of it. But one step further, once you want to move from technical, of course, technical will be there. But I think once you move up in the ladder in any organization, soft skills become very, very important. So
Mm,
because soft skills, you will be trying to motivate your team, have people, because some may be feeling low. High and low happens at any part of the team. There's a critical timelines and everything. So
yeah,
soft skills becomes very, very, very important. And as you were asking, like, how do I keep up with my technical skill? That's where things become important, right? Because once you start taking up more of the leadership roles, like the activities, your time gets sucked into a lot of stuff.
mm,
But still, how do you find a gap or where do you time? I think that's what I meant by. So if you're able to manage yourself very well, no matter whether you want to lead a 50-member team or a 100-member team, or maybe you're a CXO positions, you should be able to handle different numbers. But then having soft skills, managing others, delegating tasks, everything will okay. But then when it comes to technical part, as you were asking, how do I find time? So that's where the original thing comes into picture, right? So
yeah,
being able to manage your own schedule. So that should be very, very important. So once you are able to do that, I think you will be able to be hands-on. So you don't have to work in a day-to-day project or anything. So if there is some new skill, have a hands-on. So if you read a blog, again, if you see an open source repository, try to replicate in your own laptop and see if it works or not. If it not works, that way itself, you're already technical. So when that sort of conversation comes up in your team, you could say that, hey, I tried this project back then, because you're working in a project or a product. You know what sort of productive project you're building and what sort of language and skills are needed. So if you search for certain tools and frameworks around that, now that AI is there, a lot of chat Gen AI related plugins are getting released. So a lot
yeah,
of things comes up. So when that helps you have one step ahead always, right? So that really helps you. In a way, that is also leading by example, because you know what you're trying to build, you have
yeah,
the vision, because you would be having a vision more than your team, right? So, but then if you're not having, what sort of tools it might help, because you're trying to improve the productivity. So in that way, it will really, really help you. And of course, embrace continuous learning. That's what I've been telling since the start of the podcast. So
yeah,
that will be very, very important. And the last thing would be to try and see, if you can find a mentor who has already done that. Like if you know, if you're following someone, and if someone has already made the transition, I think no one would say no for it. So I've reached out to a couple of people who said, "Hey, I've seen that you have this journey, and I think I'm stepping into that journey. Is this something that you could help me?" I mean, I'm not going to bother you too much, but maybe a 30-minute call in a month or something, or maybe 2 months, 3 months once. It's up to you, whatever you want to get help with. I think those sort of things will really help you have a smooth transition.
That's perfect. To be honest, every time when you are answering and adding that last point, whatever you say, and lastly, this is so amazing. Like this time also, you mentioned about continuous learning, leadership is responsibility, and all those things. But then seeking mentors' advice, amazing. Like somebody who want to be leader should always seek somebody who is mentoring him to be part of this journey successfully. That's so intelligent and an amazing advice for leaders. Thank you so much, Manoj. I think because the format is of shortcast, but still we covered a bunch of information and ideas and insights for people. Still, anything before I wind up, anything that you want to, as a statement or message to my audience that we discussed about, or anything from your side, Manoj?
Yeah, I think don't stop learning. That will be very, very important. I think build strong relationship. Networking is very, very important. Don't fear for your failures. I think that's the stepping stone for our success. And if you find time, do come and contribute and give back to the community, be it whatever way. And last but not the least, take care of your health. That's very, very important.
See, again, last point you always say so amazingly. Thank you so much, Manoj. Thank you for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you so much. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of a kind, a different style of podcast or interview, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
It's very different view for me, but thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to do this.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.